Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. The goal is to be transparent and unbiased. This is not an endorsement. It's a privilege to serve you. Let's get into it.
Hey guys, what's going on? So we are checking out the Pivot Shuttle. It is a really cool, pretty high-end electric mountain bike that has a Shimano E8000 system that's pretty cool, and I'll kind of let Gary tell you a little bit about it. But this bike has a cool feature about it. It is carbon fiber. So like the frame is actually made of carbon fiber, which is pretty cool. Brings the weight down, and yeah, it's a good package. So Gary, you've been riding a similar bike around here for quite a while.
Yep.
Tell me about the experiences you've had with it.
Shimano E8000, it's going to be just super easy to pedal like a normal bike. And that's like their biggest selling point. Shimano's making, all the parts on this bike, from the derailleur, shifter, the drivetrain. Your display is super small, but it's also color. So just at a glance, you can just look down, you can see what mode you're in. The Shimano system's also tunable. You can get an app on your phone. You can go into that. You can tone everything down. That's what I've done on my personal bike. People don't want to give up their normal mountain bike because these e-bikes are going to be heavy, or it's going to feel sluggish, and this is the closest thing to your normal bike as you can get. And the carbon fiber is going to make it super light, so you're not taking that huge weight penalty on these bikes.
Great. Yeah, Gary brings up a lot of good points in a very short amount of time. Like a really good point about the Shimano E8000 system that's on this bike is that it is a lightweight motor. The motor itself is one of the lightest weight motors that are on the market today, especially from the big boys. And combining that lightweight motor with the lightweight of the carbon fiber makes the bike feel very, very natural altogether. I had a chance to ride out with Gary on some other bikes. We're actually going to take this one out in a little bit. But yeah, let's go ahead and go over the specs and show you how it does. Okay, so with this bike, of course, the first thing that you'll probably notice is the flat black paint job on it. There's a pretty good sheen to it. I kind of like it a lot. And this, again, is kind of like the carbon fiber material. You can't really feel it, but it's pretty lightweight. And that carbon fiber goes through the frame and also into like the rear triangle over here for the suspension system. And it's also carbon fiber that kind of encapsulates the battery. So this is the top of the battery that kind of has this little window so you can access the power button that's on the face of the battery itself. You use a 6 little bolts right here that are held on with a T25 tool. We'll get that off. You undo these guys here, and actually there's a 7th right there on the top. And an 8th. Okay, you take off these 8 little bolts. Actually take this whole plate off, and the battery, this battery right here, is resting on top of that, kind of like a sled, kind of like resting on top of that plate, and then you can dismount the battery. So that's a pretty cool thing, is that the battery isn't inside some special case that you can never replace or access. The battery actually comes off, and that's the same battery if you wanted to use it with another electric bike with the same Shimano system. You can swap out that battery without having to goof around with any extra casing or anything like that. So continuing on with the electric system, that's the main power switch. That's how you turn the bike on down here. Let's go ahead and give that a whirl and show you what that looks like. So pressing that button, and the display will kind of come on right here. And this is a fairly small display. You can see that's the size of my thumb, but it has a lot of bright, vibrant color, so it's pretty easy to see. In the display, it tells you your basics. It's got the off for the pedal assist, and by pressing the little shifter, I'll show you that in a sec, it changes from a light blue Eco and then into yellow trail, green trail, and then yellow for boost, which is their highest mode. Just 3 modes, kind of low, medium, high. You got your battery level right here. It shows you on 5 bars. This number 2 is pretty sweet. This is for the mechanical gears. So the mechanical gears that operate on these trigger shifters right here is for the Shimano Di2 shifting mechanism, which I'll go ahead and dance around a little bit and I'll show you what that looks like. So these actually come down here with this cabling, and the cabling comes into this thin pliable cable right here that is actually powering a tiny little servo motor that engages the mechanical gears electronically. So this system, which is mechanical gearing, you know, it's got springs, and of course gears are mechanical. This little system actuates the motor to a very precise and very exact measurement based on what you hit for the gears up front. So when you hit that little trigger, then this little motor is going to engage and precisely move the derailleur to a new position. It's very quick. It's actually very reliable. Some people had their skepticisms when it first came out, but one thing that's really cool, that Gary kind of mentioned, is the integration, is that this system is integrated with the electric display. So this display, of course, is primarily for the electric system, but it also tells you what mechanical gear you're in. Let's go ahead and show you the number 2, and we'll switch. And now it says you're in number 3, and we'll switch back to number 1, and so on. Of course, you want to keep pedaling the bike forward so that you don't lock up the gears or run into any trouble like that. But this is a really cool system that, again, kind of keeps the integration high. This, of course, is a Shimano system for the Di2. This is the Shimano display. This is actually how you change your pedal assist level. It's on a set of gears on the opposite, or a set of shifters on the opposite side of the bike. So it feels just like a regular set of shifters, and that's how you control pedal assist. And this you can do willy-nilly. You don't need to keep pedaling the bike. You know, that's why I'm a little reckless with it. But that system keeps everything all together. So the electronic and the mechanical system has a really nice way of talking to each other, if you want to call it that. Continuing on with the cockpit area up here. This display is pretty small. It's kind of out of the way. You know, if you got your hands up here, you can see it because of its color, but it is kind of small, and it doesn't tell you a ton. It's not going to count calories for you, or it's not going to, you know, give you a trip set, as far as I can tell. It's just the basics. And honestly, I kind of like it that way. I'm not too much of a detail guy when I'm going on a ride. I just kind of want it to work. So I do appreciate a kind of a smaller, more tight-knit display. It's also out of the way of a lot of the action. You know, if you're going to be bouncing around, it's not up on a pedestal up here. It's kind of tucked away, kept nice and safe on this mount here on the handlebars. Which, by the way, these are a set of handlebars they call the Phoenix handlebars from Pivot. And these are a carbon fiber handlebar that are nice and wide. And they do have this branded kind of hexagon pattern to the grips with a lock on that's branded, which is pretty nice. So these are a good set of grips. They're a little basic. If you wanted something ergonomic, you probably want a different style of bike altogether. So this is a pretty good fit. So coming up to the front of the bike, let's go ahead and talk about the brakes really quick. So up in the front, you have a 203 millimeter rotor on the front disc. This is a pretty big disc, right? So this goes into the hydraulic disc brakes, which is the Saint disc brakes. We'll kind of talk about that in a sec. But with the rotor itself, this is a very large rotor with cooling fins. So these little fins actually provide some more surface area to cool down the disc as it's being grabbed by the caliper down here with the pistons inside the mechanism. And so this one is a 203 millimeter rotor, so it's pretty big. And in the back, you have a more normal size, I suppose, 180 disc. And the reason for that is when you're mountain biking, you want the large, like the front motor, not motor, the front wheel does more of the stopping power, the front of the bicycle, as you're coming down a hill. And so you would actually want something with more power up in the front to kind of give you more bite as you're going downhill, because the burden of slowing you down is on the front of the vehicle as opposed to the rear. So actually having this one smaller and then that one bigger is a design choice that they made to actually increase safety, because that way you're actually braking at a more even rate instead of having to, you know, kind of be flung off the bike. I think that's kind of an extreme case, but so that's a design choice that was really made pretty wisely. As well with these brakes, you do have some cooling fins along the little pads here, or the caliper that holds onto the pads. And these are hydraulic disc brakes, so you have like a hydraulic line going all the way up to the front of the bike where the reservoirs are up by the brake handles. These are some fairly small brake handles. I'd call these like a two-finger handle up on the front. And this is where you have the reservoir for servicing, which, by the way, if you've never done hydraulic disc brakes, I definitely recommend watching a lot of guides, reading a couple of books, because it's not for the faint of heart. It can be a little intimidating. Coming back up to the front of the bike, You have a Fox Performance Elite 36 for the fork up here. This is a pretty high travel fork, 140 millimeters of travel on this, with an adjustment up on the top of the fork here towards the stock. You can actually get to that from the top of the bike, as if you're riding the bike. You can just kind of reach down, grab that little guy and twist it if you wanted to. You have a quick release for the front of the bike. So on here, you undo that lever and then you can pull out the entire axle. And then that way you can get access to the wheel if you want to pack up the bike in a car, or if you just want to service the wheel. That's a pretty easy thing to do. This one is actually tubeless from the get-go. I had to ask a couple of the service guys if the bike came with tubes, and they said no, it doesn't. It came with a tubeless setup already from the factory. So this has a Presto valve in it, and there are no tubes. So that's a pretty cool feature. These are kind of like what they call kind of like a plus size tire. It's a little bit wider than normal. This is a 27.5 by 2.8 wide tire, so it's not quite 3 inches wide, but it's a little bit chubby, which in my opinion is a really good size for mountain biking. The fat tires are pretty cool. They can go in some great terrain, but for more regular mountain biking trails, I like the fat tires, or sorry, not the fat. I like the plus size tires quite a bit. Okay, moving over to the back of the bike, you have a fairly good chain here that has a lot of tension to it for mountain biking purposes. We talked a little bit about the Di2 and how it kind of works, but this cassette here is an 11-speed cassette with 11 to 46 actually. So there's 11 cogs here and 46 with a bunch of gears in between. That's a pretty big cog in the back. You could climb something pretty heavy with it. And then coming up to the front, you have a 34-tooth chain ring in the front of the bike connected to the Shimano E8000 motor. So Gary kind of touched on it a little bit, but the Shimano E8000 motor has a lot of power in a fairly small packaging. So Shimano has taken great strides in helping to integrate the electric system to feel more like a regular bicycle, kind of bringing the conventional bike crowd into the fold, so to speak, of electric. Okay, and here you have the DW Link rear suspension system. So that's a system that Pivot has been using on all their dual suspension bikes, and it's really nice. It kind of gives the dropper, or not the dropper, it kind of gives the damper kind of like this bottomless feel, they say, where it just keeps going and then kind of compacts. That's a really good thing because it helps keep traction on the road, or sorry, on the trail as you're riding along. And one last thing to mention is the dropper seat post. So this seat post actually is kind of fixed in there fairly well. But if you press on this little lever right here and you're sitting on the bike, the seat post will actually go down. Now, you didn't really see that because the main purpose is to come back up. So as you're riding downhill, you'd probably want the seat down because you'll be standing up on the pedals, kind of using your body as a shock absorber, meaning using your legs as a shock absorber. And then when you start to get back to an uphill, or perhaps when you get to the road to go back to your car, you would press this up, or press the lever so that the seat will go up, and then you can kind of get more stride. There we go. That way you can get more of a length on your legs and kind of get more stride as you're pedaling along. So yeah, this is a great bike, the Pivot Shuttle. Let's go ahead and jump on and take it for a ride. So when you're shifting pedal assist, you use a trigger system that is identical to switching the gears. So that gives you a really, really good user friendliness, I suppose is the word I'll use. It makes it really easy to identify whether you're switching up, whether you're switching down. It gives you a tactile feel, so you don't have to like hit a touch screen or something like that. That's not going to work very well. It gives you a lot more control over the system when you want to change pedal assist levels very quickly. So that's a really nice mountain biking feature that, again, this bike is definitely made for, that really flows well. Because there's a lot of other systems that have like smartphone connectivity or something like that, or they have a really big colorful display, you know, and those are cool and everything, but when you're mountain biking, you just want to be able to have control. You want to be able to kind of like know your system, if that makes sense. You want to be able to use it the way that, I don't know, the way that you would see a sushi chef using a knife, I suppose. That kind of thing. I don't know, I'm kind of getting long-winded, so yeah, let's just go ahead and keep riding. All right, so the rain is starting to escalate, so we had to wrap things up a little bit, but nonetheless, it was a great ride. I'm always happy to take a ride on a E8000 kind of bike. So yeah, if you want to check out more information on the Pivot Shuttle, which is a great carbon fiber bike, we have that along with other carbon fiber bikes at ElectricBikeReview.com. You can compare this and kind of compare the prices and the specifications. That's also where you're going to find the full review on this bike, including all the measurements, ElectricBikeReview.com. And if you'd like, you can go there and participate in the forums, you know, ask a question and kind of interact with the community at large. So thanks for watching, guys. Ride safe.